Thomas and Elena Chapman were still unpacking boxes in their new single-story ranch house when the doorbell rang. Thomas opened the door to find Sharon Miller, the impeccably dressed HOA president, flanked by two stern-faced committee members. "Welcome gift basket," Sharon announced with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes, thrusting forward a cellophane-wrapped arrangement of store-bought cookies and HOA paperwork. As Thomas thanked her, Sharon peered past him, eyes narrowing at the moving company's ramp and the specialized equipment for Elena's wheelchair. "We have standards here at Oak Ridge Estates," she said pointedly. "The welcoming committee meets Thursday at 7. Attendance is mandatory." When Thomas explained that Elena's multiple sclerosis made evening gatherings difficult, Sharon's smile hardened. "Everyone participates, Mr. Chapman. No exceptions." As their new neighbors walked away, Thomas caught them whispering and glancing back at the house. What they didn't know, the moving truck had come directly from the governor's mansion, as Elena had insisted on keeping her high-profile position quiet to maintain some normalcy in their personal lives. The violation notices began appearing 3 days later. First, it was a complaint about their garden hose being visible. ISO infraction, $75. Then came citations for their mailbox height, non-conforming postal installation, $150, and the specialized ramp Thomas had installed, unapproved architectural modification, $350. Each morning brought new pink slips, each with Sharon's flourishing signature. Elena, exhausted from secret late-night budget negotiations at the Capitol, suggested they simply pay the fees, but Thomas had discovered something interesting. Their property sat on the neighborhood boundary line, technically giving them exemptions from certain HOA requirements. When he presented this information to Sharon, her eyes flashed dangerously. "We'll see about that," she said, already tapping on her phone. The next day, Thomas found their car blocked in by maintenance vehicles that mysteriously disappeared the moment Elena called for her official driver, who thankfully used an unmarked car to maintain her privacy. That evening, surveillance cameras Thomas had installed captured Sharon measuring their ramp with a tape measure, taking photos, and placing something in their mailbox, a certified letter scheduling a formal HOA hearing for their blatant violations of community standards. The tension escalated when Thomas found HOA board members taking photos of Elena struggling up their walkway after a particularly exhausting physical therapy session. Just documenting ongoing violations. Called out Sharon's husband, Gerald, not even attempting to hide his camera. That night, the Chapmans received an email blast sent to the entire neighborhood with the subject, "Property Value ALERT," featuring poorly angled photos of their home's accessibility modifications, labeled as unsightly alterations threatening community standards. The message specifically invited neighbors to attend an emergency HOA meeting about the Chapman situation. Thomas was livid, but Elena remained suspiciously calm. "Don't worry," she said, making a private phone call. "I've been dealing with bullies in the state legislature for years." The next morning, as Thomas left for work, he found neighbors gathered near their driveway, pointing and whispering. Among them stood Sharon, clipboard in hand, collecting signatures for what appeared to be a petition. When one neighbor raised concerns about targeting someone with a disability, Sharon loudly proclaimed, "If she's really disabled, why have none of us ever seen her outside? This is about property values, not excuses." Little did she know that Elena, having rescheduled the cabinet meeting, was watching through the blinds, phone in hand, recording every word. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Wednesday, intentionally conflicting with Elena's publicly published speaking engagement at a downtown fundraiser. To Sharon's visible disappointment, the Chapmans arrived precisely on time, Elena elegantly dressed in a tailored suit rather than the loungewear Sharon had seen her in previously. More surprising were the 3 professionally dressed individuals who accompanied them, carrying briefcases and legal pads. As Sharon called the meeting to order in the crowded community center, she faltered briefly upon noticing 2 state troopers quietly taking positions by the doors. "We're here to address the Chapman violations," Sharon began, projecting photos of their home onto a screen. Before she could continue, one of Elena's companions stood. Before proceedings continue, I should introduce myself. Mary Washington, Attorney General. A murmur rippled through the room. And I'd like to inform everyone that this meeting is being recorded as potential evidence in a state investigation into discriminatory housing practices. Sharon's face drained of color as Elena wheeled herself to the front of the room. I believe we haven't been properly introduced, Elena said, voice carrying effortlessly as she extended her hand. Governor Elena Chapman. Now shall we discuss how your harassment campaign violates at least 7 state housing laws that, coincidentally, I helped write. The story exploded across local and national media. HOA president unknowingly harasses state governor over disability accommodations. Sharon resigned in disgrace after investigations revealed she had targeted other homeowners with similar tactics. Rather than pursuing legal action, Elena used the incident as a catalyst for positive change. At a press conference held in her driveway, accessible ramp prominently featured. She announced new state legislation protecting homeowners with disabilities from discriminatory HOA practices. The Chapman Act received widespread bipartisan support, with even former critics praising the governor's handling of personal adversity. 6 months later, Oak Ridge Estates had transformed. The newly elected HOA board, which included 2 members with disabilities, had implemented inclusive community guidelines. Thomas headed a neighborhood accessibility committee that helped other residents modify their homes for aging in place. The community center was renovated to exceed ADA standards, hosting the governor's monthly accessible community roundtables that drew visitors from across the state. The ultimate irony came when Sharon's own mother moved to the neighborhood to recover from hip surgery in a fully accessible mother-in-law suite that Gerald had built following Thomas's design recommendations. As for Elena and Thomas, they finally found the peaceful home life they'd sought, plus an unexpected platform to create lasting change that would impact communities far beyond their neighborhood's boundaries.